This is J. Krishnamurti's public talk in Benares, 1969.
Perhaps after I've talked a little, you'll be good enough to ask questions. And thus, we shall be able to communicate with each other more freely. I think it must be fairly obvious to most people that violence is spreading throughout the world. Every form of violence, rioting, wars, every form of hatred against one group or against another. In America, you see it. Race riots, students in revolt. In Europe, it takes a different form. And in India, you know what's going on here much better than I do, probably. So one of the great problems is, why does man live in violence? Why does he perpetuate violence? There have been many explanations. The intellectuals have given varied and multiple explanations. Overpopulation, the modern social life, the technological development that doesn't cultivate any part of the human being except one particular part, and so on. People cooped up in cities where they have no space at all. They have experimented putting rats in a very narrow space, and they become disoriented. They destroy each other because they have no space to live. And also they have given many other explanations that society is undergoing a tremendous change because religions, education, science have completely failed. They do not offer peace between man and man. On the contrary, society is becoming more and more complex. More and more laws are being passed. And so there are those who say, you must have more leadership, bigger, nobler, wider, authoritarian outlook. There is the communist world with their authority, with their dictatorship. And they too have not solved the problem. If there is any kind of free expression, they are either put into a lunatic asylum or taken away their card or whatever they take away and make the people, the writer, the painter, the thinker, no person at all. So there it is. When one observes this phenomenon that's going on in the world. So, how is this violence to be stopped? This country has preached non-violence for many years as an idea. But I'm afraid the ideal has been no value at all. because people are just as violent as anywhere else. As has been shown in the student riots in this university, in the other cities where there have been racial riots. This seems to be the most prevalent form of expression of human relationship. If nothing works, let us burn the other person or destroy the other person through war, through specialized divisions as races and nationalities, and so on. So seeing all this objectively, not as a philosopher, as an intellectual, as a Hindu or a Muslim or a Buddhist or a scientist, seeing all this chaos, this misery that's going on in the world, one asks if this stream of violence can ever be stopped. Will a new philosophy, a new leader, a new religion, new political party put an end to this devastating, destructive relationship between man and man? No philosophy, no organized religion, no leader can possibly change the human mind. And we are concerned with the human mind, the mind that has been conditioned, shaped, molded for millions of years to be violent as part of the human mind, to create antagonism, to live in enmity, to be in conflict, to be at war. I think this is a fact which most people do accept. Then, seeing this extraordinary phenomena, this crisis, what is a human being to do? That's you and I. What are we to do? Not about a particular form of violence, either in this country or in Europe or in America or in Russia. Not the fragmentation of violence, but the violence as a whole. So, the particular form of violence must be understood in the context of the whole violence. That is, it's no good tackling one form of violence, the student revolt, or the war, or the class differences, the riots, the white against the black, or one particular system of ideals, as the communist ideals opposed to the socialist and the capitalist. I think this phenomena of violence must be approached, it seems to me, from a point of view that is concerned with the total violence of man. Why is he violent? Violent in all his relationships, violent sexually, violent which denies security for the whole of the human being, so is it possible, is it at all within the reach of man that he can live at peace with his neighbor? I do not know if you have asked yourself that question, not as an idea, but actually, not theoretically, but factually. Whether one can live in this world without withdrawing into a monastery or taking the sannyasi robe, whether he can live without conflict. I do not know if you have asked this question. And if you do ask this question seriously, with great attention and care, what would be your answer? Why is man psychologically, inwardly violent, which expresses itself socially, economically, racially as violence? I think this is really a very important question to ask. Man, who has lived for millions and millions of years, man who has inherited this violence from the animal through the higher species of apes and so on till he has reached this modern age, why, after all these millions of years, why he has not been able to find a way of life, daily life, not an ideological life, but a life of daily existence. Why, in that life, he has not found a way, a relationship in which there is no conflict whatsoever? Conflict being a contradiction within oneself, the fragmentation of the whole structure of our being, of our mind and heart, broken up, divided. And where there is division, separation, in any form, there must be violence. If a human being in himself keeps life in departments, the business life, the religious life, the social life, the family life, the national life, and so on, where there is such division, which is contradiction in himself, there must be not only violence, but this dualistic existence. And out of this arises the extraordinary importance in the modern age given to sex. Why? Which has now become another form of violence, which demands a great deal of pleasure and therefore conflict. Why? Man not only given importance to self-expression through violence, but also why he has given sex such extraordinary importance. And why religion? Not the organized religion. I don't mean the organized religion at all. Nor do we mean religion based on theory, ideals, beliefs, dogmas. That's not religion at all. Why religion? Which was the binding force in the world at one time. In Europe, the Roman, the Catholic world held sway over all of Europe. Here too, at one time, religion played extraordinary part and tried to block, prevent violence coming into being. So you see, violence, which means conflict, not only outwardly, but inwardly. Violence to oneself and to another. It is violence when we torture ourselves to fit into a particular pattern established by society, by religions. When we condemn ourselves or so-called discipline ourselves to conform to a pattern. The word discipline means to learn, not to conform, not to obey, not to imitate, but to learn. And a mind that is learning, and a heart that is looking, observing, is not in conflict. It's only conflict arises when accumulation of knowledge, as opposed to learning, the racial knowledge, as the Hindu, as the Muslim, or the division between the uneducated and the educated. This sense of division must inevitably breed conflict. So, why is it that socially, which is the relationship between man and man, and sexually and religiously, why is it that we have come to a period, to a crisis, when the response to the challenge is always in terms of violence? You understand? I hope I'm making myself somewhat clear. There is a tremendous challenge in the world now. A new challenge. a great crisis. And our response to this crisis is to be violent. And give such extraordinary importance to pleasure. Sexually, in every form, morally, and so on. Our response to the challenge is according to our conditioning. And our conditioning is essentially based on violence, division, and pleasure. I think this is fairly obvious. Tradition in this country plays an extraordinary part, a destructive, sterilizing part. And we respond to this enormous challenge in terms of as a Hindu, or as a Buddhist, or a student, or a Muslim, or this or that. And so, when we respond to this challenge inadequately, and we must, when we respond to it traditionally, or in terms of pleasure, the very inadequacy of our response breeds great harm, brings about great sorrow, not only to yourself but to another. So, what is one to do? Systems have failed. You understand this fact? This system, say for communism, which promised so much. No wars, the withering away of the state, and so on and on and on, all that. It has now become a system of bureaucracy, brutal dictatorship, no freedom. And any system, it doesn't matter what system, sociologically or religiously, any system must inevitably fail. Because the challenge is not to create a new system. The challenge demands a new quality of mind. A different feeling, a different sense of relationship between man and man. So we cannot possibly answer the challenge in terms of the old. Please do understand this very simple factor. You know, there is, in America, the speaker went to several universities and talked there. And in an affluent society like America, the problem and the challenge is the same, but they translate it differently. Here the problem is the same, the challenge is the same. And we, or rather you, because I am not an Indian, you respond to it in terms of your traditional background. So what is necessary is a total mutation a total transformation of the whole structure and the nature of not only the brain, but of the mind also. Because the problem, the crisis is so vast, so complex. Not only in the technological world, but also in the human world, in the world of living. It demands a new mind, a new heart. And this cannot possibly come about through any system, through any leader, through any kind of organized education. It comes alone only when human beings, you, are awake, inwardly aware of what is going on within yourself, how you have divided life into the business, scientific, religious, family, this fragmentation of your whole structure of your life. For this fragmentation takes place when there is fear. You know what fear is? Not only the physical fear, but the greater fear which is within the psychological fears. Fear is in relation to something. Fear doesn't exist by itself. Now, to be aware of that fear, to go into it, understand it, and can this fear, which is the expression of a demand to be completely secure, because the brain demands that it be wholly and completely safe, secure. As a child demands. And when there is no security, as modern society doesn't give it any security, there is fear begins. And whether this fear can be put aside completely through analysis. Can I go into all this, or are you tired of it? Because it's really a very serious problem. It's not just an entertainment. It's not a philosophical amusement for you to sit there and listen to a few words. We are working together. Communication means that. To work, to build, to create together. The word communication means that. Not for you to merely listen to a few words, agree or disagree, and walk away from here. We are partaking together in the understanding of a great problem, which doesn't need agreement or disagreement. It demands that you pay attention to it, that you look at it, that you learn all about it. But you cannot possibly learn all about it if you are afraid And being afraid, we try to escape from it. The escape may be a drink, women, sex, or the temple, or become a sannyasi, a monk. But fear is there. And this fear I don't know who is going to talk, who is going to win this. Can this fear be analyzed and put aside? Which is what most of the psychologists and the analysts are trying to do. You understand my question? Can fear, which is in the human mind and heart, can that be put aside? Can there be freedom from fear through analysis? In analysis is implied the analyzer and the thing analyzed. Right? In there. There is the analyzer who is analyzing what he calls fear. So, there is the analyzer who looks to the cause of fear, tries to analyze it, dissect it, open it up. But the analyzer, is he different from the thing he analyzes? Do please, this is not a sermon. You have to do it yourself now to find out the truth of it. Is the analyzer who says he is afraid, is the analyzer different from the thing which he is going to analyze? Or the analyzer is the analyzed? Right? I don't know how you will answer this question. Probably you have not thought about it at all. Though you may be great professors and lecturers and intellectual people. But probably you haven't approached this problem at all that way. This may be new to you. So you have to look at it. Is the observer different from the thing he observes? And as long as there is this division between the observer and the observed, there must be conflict. And that is the very root of violence. Right? You understand, sir? Human relationship is based on this principle, that the observer is different from the thing he observes. The husband is different from the thing he calls his wife. No, look at it, sir. You are involved in it. It isn't just an amusement. You are terribly involved in it. You, the husband or the wife or the father, the mother, whatever it is, you have your own life of ambition, greed, pursuit of pleasure, and competitive life, seeking position, prestige. That's your life. if you're a man. If you're a woman, you have your own life, isolated, different from the husband. You may sleep together, but the fact is that you're two different entities, working within the walls of your own desires, within the walls of your own ambitions, and so on and so on. And your relationship is based on the image of each other. Right, isn't it? It doesn't matter if you don't understand it, you don't understand. And therefore, the relationship is between the images, and therefore division, and therefore conflict. And that is the real issue. Whether this division between man and man as the observer and the observed, whether that division can ever disappear. That is, knowledge as experience and memory create this division between man and woman, between man and man. You have the image of the wife, and the wife has the image of you, built through many years of pleasure, irritation, anger, and so on, all the rest of it. And these two images have relationship. Not human beings, but the images, which is the memory, the past. So, as long as there is fragmentation in one's life, as the observer and the observed, there must be conflict. You know, sir, when you look at a tree, the beauty of it, the shape of it, the light on the leaf, see it in the rain, see it during the evening and during the daytime. If you look at it, with the memory you have about that tree, if you say that is a mango or a tamarind or whatever the tree be, your knowledge, your botanical knowledge about the tree is preventing you from looking at it. You become the observer with your knowledge, and the tree is something separate from you. Right, sir? So where there is space between you as the observer and the thing observed, there must be contradiction, and therefore there must be conflict and violence. So, how can this division, which is time and space, disappear? You understand my question? Because we have very carefully traced the process of violence, the way of violence. As long as there is division, separation, space, time between human beings, the one observing the other, the one as the observer and the other observed, the Hindu observing the Muslim, which is the image he has of himself as a Hindu, and the Muslim, the image which he has about himself, which is his belief, his dogma, his superstition, his stupidities, and the Hindu with his dogmas, with his superstitions, and with his stupidities. This is the image he has about himself, and the image the Muslim has or the Christian has about himself. So, as long as this image remains, there is division, and therefore there is conflict, and therefore there is violence. Right? Now, how is this space to disappear? Space created by thought, as the Hindu, as the communist. The space brought about by memory. How is that to disappear? So that we meet each other without the image, without the observer as the me, and you without the observer, which is also the you. The we and they. How is this to totally, completely come to an end? And is love a matter of pleasure? Is love desire? You have to answer this question, not look to the speaker, because that has no value at all. Because our morality, our social morality is based on this pleasure. And therefore it's utterly immoral, this social morality, the respectability. So one has to find out for oneself whether the space between man and man, as the observer and the observed, can be totally dissolved. That is, can I look at you and meet you not as a Hindu with all his racket, with all his superstitious noise, and you as the Muslim with your noise and with your racket? Can we meet as human beings without label? Because it is only then we can solve this immense problem. This problem of violence among the students, among the priests, among every human being. That is, can the mind, which is the product of time, product of evolution, product of centuries upon centuries of conditioning, can that mind break through its conditioning? Not in some distant time, but immediately. Otherwise, your house is being burnt and you're not doing anything about it. Now, this, if I may use the word meditation, which I hope you will look at it, listen to it delicately, not with your particular system of meditation. Not with your particular idea of what meditation should be, whether it's Buddhist, Zen, or your own particular Hindu. Forget all that and listen to it, if you can. Which is to find out meditatively. The meaning of that word meditation means to ponder over, to observe, to give attention, to learn, not to follow some stupid system of meditation, but to make the mind so extraordinarily sensitive, alive, not burdened, and therefore free. That demands the quality of meditation. To find the truth of this division between man and man. To learn. And no book will teach you about it. Not the Gita or the Upanishads or the Quran or the Bible. Because books are valueless, however sacred they are. So you have to go into yourself. But you mustn't dig a deep hole in yourself. Because the more you dig, the more you get the same thing, deeper and deeper and deeper, and you're caught in the depth of it. You must touch it lightly. Because the inquiry into oneself demands great delicacy. You're learning about it. And to learn about something, you mustn't come to it with previous knowledge, saying that you are the Atman, not the Atman, the soul, not soul, and all that stuff. You must come to it with a fresh mind. And that is the beauty of meditation. Not all the tricks that one plays on it. So we have this problem. There is a challenge in the world. Not only in this particular part of the world, but everywhere. And all challenges are always new. It's not an old challenge. And therefore it demands that you respond to it in a different manner, altogether in a different way, in a new way. And if you respond to it in the old terms, you are going to destroy the world. So you have to have a fresh mind, a new quality of mind and heart. And that can come about only when you observe yourself and you're aware of yourself. Not condemning yourself, but just to be aware, to watch. And this watching, in which there are no implications of virtue and therefore no condemnation. Such watching is really the religious mind. And it's only such a mind that can live at peace within itself and bring about peace in the world. Now, after having spoken, perhaps I might like to ask questions. First of all, sirs, before you ask questions, find out why you are asking the question. Whether it is to catch the speaker, to trip him up, or you are asking for the sake of argument, to show your cleverness, Or are you asking to find out what is true objectively? Not only objectively, but also inwardly. Because if you are going to ask questions, quoting books, comparing what has been said with what you have already read, let me assure you, the speaker, has not read any philosophical book, no Gita, no Upanishads, or any philosophical or psychological books. Therefore, if you're going to quote and compare, then you will compare and quote for yourself. And to ask the right question is extraordinarily important. Because the right question can only be put by a mind that has really gone into all this, has inquired, has really inquired objectively, not as a Hindu, as a technician, or as a philosopher, as a professor, or a scientist, but as a human being. Therefore, his mind is free to inquire. And when such a mind asks a question, it has validity, it has vitality, it has significance, depth to it. But merely to get up and say, do you mean this and do you mean that, means nothing. But in saying this, please don't think I'm preventing you from asking questions.
There's a guy here who's wanting to.
Does challenge create violence, or does violence create challenge?
Beg pardon?
Does a challenge create violence, or does violence create challenge?
Violence creates. Does challenge creates violence, or does violence create challenge?
Does challenge create violence, or violence create the challenge? I don't know, we're going to find out. Does the challenge create violence, or violence create the challenge? Right? That's the question. Now, first of all, why are you asking it? Can violence create the challenge? Please follow this slowly. Go into it step by step. Is challenge creating violence? Now, there is challenge and violence, right? Now, why do we divide the two? Why is there this division between what is called challenge and what is called violence, the response? Or there is only challenge and not response. If the challenge is adequate, if the challenge is right and the response is adequate to it, is there a division at all? Are you following this? When we separate challenge and response, then there is division. Then there is conflict between the challenge and the response, which is inevitably inadequate. Right? The inadequacy to the challenge is there because of human conditioning. His pettiness, his worries, his particular demand for security, pleasure, and so on. But when the challenge and response are together, That is, there is only challenge and not response. Or you are responding all the time adequately, then there is no challenge. And next thing, why do we have to have challenge at all? You have challenge only when you are asleep, right? If you are completely awake, what is the need of challenge? You're following on? A man who is awake, watching, observing, learning, why does he need, what is there need for him to have any challenge at all? It's only the man that's half asleep or asleep that needs to be poked, shoved, pushed, shaken. And therefore the challenge becomes the awakener. He pushes him to wake up. But to a man who is awake, there is no challenge at all. So the question is then, why is man asleep, right? I don't know, you follow all this? You understand the difference between learning and acquiring knowledge? Oh Lord. Learning is one thing and acquiring knowledge is another. Acquiring knowledge is a bondage and learning is never a bondage. That is, knowledge is always in the past, right? Knowledge implies the past. The scientific knowledge, which has been gathered for 200 or 300 or 400 years or 1,000 years, it's there accumulated. And you are adding to it all the time. Something new is being discovered and added. And there's this enormous storehouse of scientific knowledge. And having accumulated that knowledge, there is action from that knowledge. Right? In there. I hope this is all somewhat clear. If you don't understand, you don't understand. And learning is a constant movement without acquiring knowledge. Look, you have an experience and you have learned something about it, from it, that has become your memory. The very brain cells themselves are that memory. You have had an experience and you have learned something from it. And having learned from it, you act. Therefore, your action and what you have learned are two different things. Right? Therefore, there is a division. Put it round the other way, which is, you have an ideal. I don't know why you have it, but most people have ideals, which is quite idiotic. People have ideals. Say, for instance, of non-violence. That's one of the pet ideals. But your action from the ideal is entirely different. You say, I am approximating my action according to the ideal, right? And so there is always an approximation, a division. And therefore there's a conflict. But whereas if you had no ideal, but only the fact, then you are learning about the fact, not having learned, acting from what you have learned. You're always living in the active present of that verb to learn. All right? So, a mind that is learning, not having learned, a mind that is constantly in movement, constantly watching, learning, becomes extraordinarily sensitive, alive, and therefore vitally intelligent. Why does such a mind need a challenge at all? Light doesn't need challenge, it is light. It's only in darkness that there is a challenge, the demand for light. Right. Any other questions, sirs?
It was said that the basic cause of violence is the deviant. The basic cause of violence, it was said, is the deviant in terms of the observer and the observed.
Division in terms of the observer and the observed.
I can't quite understand, so please somebody will translate.
Basic cause of knowledge, basic cause of violence is division between.
Yeah, right, and
it was also said that in fact the observer is the observer. This has not been understood, sir.
He says he's not been able to understand how the observer is also the observed.
right, sir. I've got it. Why do you say the observer is the observed? There is fear. Is the observer different from the fear? You understand, sir? There is fear. Is that fear different from the one who is observing that fear? What do you say, sir? Are they not both the same? When you are hungry, and is the hunger different from the thinker who says he is hungry? Or they are both the same? Look, when you observe the tree, and you have the botanical knowledge or dislike or like of that tree, you look at it through eyes of prejudice, right? Right, sir? Oh, no. But when you have no prejudice, when you look at it with clear eyes, there is no space between you and it. Then your relationship to it is entirely different. Then the tree becomes extraordinarily alive. The root, the branch, the whole structure of the tree is something extraordinary. Because there is no division, there is no screen as knowledge between you and it. Now you look at your wife or husband that way tomorrow or tonight or when you go back home. Can you look at your wife or husband that way? Have you ever tried it? To look without the knowledge which you have accumulated about her or him, which is your prejudice, your like and dislike, the image that you have. Then when you do look, do you look with the eyes of love or with the eyes of prejudice? Yes, sir.
What is the practical way out of violence in today's world?
What is the practical way out of violence? Right, sir? What is the practical way out of this violence in which man lives? The practical way is the way of violence. Don't laugh it, sir. Don't laugh. Look, listen to that question. Please listen to that question. He says, please tell me what is the practical way. Which means he accepts authority. He doesn't know. He says, please, for God's sake, tell me what to do. The practical way. And the demand for the practical is because one is confused oneself. Therefore one looks to another. And that's what you have done for a million years, to look to somebody to tell you what to do. How to breathe, how to meditate, how to live with each other. Don't have sex, do have sex. If you want God, don't need touch a woman. And that's what you have been told for millions of years. And then you get up now and say, please tell me what to do. Which means you're still caught in the pattern of tradition and authority. Therefore, the first thing, sir, is to be free from authority. Don't look to another, including to the speaker. Especially to the speaker, because you are very easily influenced. So can the mind do listen to it? Be free of authority. Which doesn't mean you become rude, violent, all the rest of it. Understand why authority, both legally and inwardly. Why you have authority? Because you are afraid. You look to another. You want to be told like a child what to do. And there are millions of people to tell you what to do. All your books tell you what to do. Your gurus, everybody around you tells you what to do. Which means you will never find out for yourself. Which means that you will never learn. And it is one of the things that is destroying this world, which is authority. So the practical way, sir, is to understand why you have authority. Why you follow another. Whether it's the communist following or the socialist following or you're following your guru. Why? Because you're frightened. You want to be secure. You don't want to make a mistake. Why not make a mistake and learn? Therefore, a mind which is afraid seeks authority as a shelter. And where there is shelter, there is darkness. Yes, sir.
Would you kindly speak a little louder?
Yes, you speak and accept love, and I don't know love. You understand?
Did you say you
Think
accept
about love, and I don't know love.
You speak of love,
And accept.
and I don't know what it means. Is that it? You speak of love, and I don't know what it means. Right, sir? Right. Please do sit down, sir. What does love mean to you? Not as an idea, not as a principle, not what love should be. You understand? Not as a theory, not as a belief, not as a principle or what the books say. But do you know what it means, love? Do you? You're grown up, married, children. Do you know what it means? Or young people, students, the girl and the boy, do you know what it means? Huh?
What did you say? Unity.
That's an idea, isn't it? Do listen, sir. Before you reply, find out what the speaker has said. He said, don't translate it in terms of some idea. When you say it's unity, well, have you unity? Actually? Or is it just an idea, a theory, or an ideal, a goal, a principle? Therefore, brush all that aside, for God's sake. Face the fact. Look at it, find out what it means, not what it should mean. It's like a hungry man. He wants food, not the description of food. And you're not hungry. You're fed on words. Therefore you say unity. So let's find out. What is love? Do you know what it means? What actually it is now? It is associated with sex and pleasure. Right? Right, sirs? Not the love of God, love of humanity, love of truth, all that is Tommy Rod. Nonsense, all that. That's just a theory, living in a mystical, fallacious, illusory world. But the fact is, as it is now in this world, pick up any magazine, any book, they talk about love, sex, and pleasure. Right? Can you face that fact? No? No, you're too frightened. Now, if you face that fact, then the question is love pleasure? You understand, sir? Is love pleasure? If it is, then in it there is fear, there is jealousy, there is domination, possessiveness. Right? In there, the thing that gives me pleasure, I must possess, I must dominate, it must belong to me. Right? You're all very silent.
What is the difference between pleasure and joy?
I'm coming to that, sir. You ask, what's the difference between pleasure and joy? We'll come to that in a minute. Let's first understand what it means, pleasure. Our gods, our morality, our what we call love is based on pleasure. Now, when you have pleasure, there must be fear with it. You might lose it. You must keep it. Right, sir? You take pleasure in a belief that there is or that there is not God. That's your pleasure. And you hold on to it. Anybody that questions that belief, you are afraid, and therefore you become antagonistic. So pleasure must inevitably bring fear with it. That's an obvious fact. So, is love, pleasure, fear, pain, jealousy? Don't say no. This is what you call love. Then, if love is not all that, then why? Then you must get rid of, you must be free of jealousy, envy, possessiveness, domination. Then the thing will be there. You don't have to look for it. We have dissipated this energy called love through pleasure. So one has to understand pleasure and joy. Is joy, ecstasy, pleasure? Pleasure has always a motive, a cause, an object from which or towards which there is a response, or which evokes a response. There is always the one who seeks pleasure from or through something, person, position, money, or this or that, belief. But is joy, ecstasy, dependent on anything? If it is pleasure. So pleasure has a continuity in time brought about by thought, and joy is not the product of thought. It has no cause. And that's why one has to go into this non-verbally to find out, to learn. And that is the greatest revolution, not all these shoddy little revolutions, economic or social revolutions. The real revolution is the psychological inward revolution, so that your mind is free from authority, from fear. And when you understand joy, when there is joy, you will know what pleasure is. In the greater, the lesser is. But if you cling to the lesser, the greater has no value. Right, sir? And love is that. So, love is not thought. Love is not jealousy. When the mind is free from fear, please do listen for your own sake. When the mind is free from fear, from this demand to be eternally secure, when the mind is free from fear, ambition, greed, and envy, and the things that fill the heart of the mind, when the mind and the heart are empty of the things which the mind has brought about through thought, then there is love. You don't have to look for it. You don't have to go out and say, I must be loved or I must love. There is love. It's not yours or mine. And that's the beauty and the holiness of love.
How do definitions condition the mind?
What, sir?
How do definitions condition the mind?
What is the definition?
How does it condition the mind?
Huh?
He says, how do definitions condition the mind?
How does definition condition the
How
mind?
do definitions condition the mind?
Oh, I see. How or does a definition condition the mind? You know, so one of the most difficult things is to be free of the word. To be free of the description and remain only with the described. You understand, sir? Because most people, love definitions, love descriptions, love verbal exchange. But to be free of the word. Sir, look. The word God has caught you. You're enslaved by that word. That's your conditioning. And you have definition of what God is. With a long beard or short beard, he's this or that. And you are, by the description, definition, you are caught. And that definition, description, formula conditions your mind. Therefore, one has to be free of the word. Because the word is not the thing. The door is not the door. So, the mind caught in a description, in a definition, in a formula is always conditioned. What time? 5 to? Oh, we better stop, don't you think, sir? What your last question, sir?
You've spoken about awareness, but this awareness is not completely clear. So I would like to have further clarification regarding this awareness. What awareness exactly is?
Awareness.
Yes, I understand what awareness means. Do you really want to know? Or is it just a question? Good. You're asking, what is awareness? First of all, let us say that awareness is not the result of a practice, right? To practice awareness, you understand, watching, being aware of what you are doing, thinking, being aware, watching it, practicing. So awareness is not to be practiced, full stop. That's first thing. Do you accept that? Huh? Yes. I don't think you do, sir. Because I'll show you, sir, in a minute. I'll show you. Because there are a great many schools throughout the world trying to practice awareness. Say, be aware how your toe wiggles. Be aware what you're thinking. Be aware of how you walk, and so on, so on. Watch it, watch it, watch it, watch it. And that's called awareness. But we say that's not awareness. is part of it, but not the whole of it. What does awareness mean? To be aware. You are aware that I am sitting here, right? You are conscious that I am sitting here. If you are aware that I am sitting, and the me who is sitting here on the platform is an image that you have about him, right? The reputation, he is a great man, less man, he is a stupid man, he is a fool, this and that. That prevents you from being aware. Right, sir? So you are not being aware when there is any form of image forming. Right? So, any interference of thought in observation denies awareness. Oh my God. Because when you project thought, thought is memory. Thought is always old. Thought is never free, because it is the response of memory, and memory is always old. Therefore, when thought comes and says you must be aware, then thought is aware, not aware. There is no sense of being aware. So when awareness is not the product of thought, it's free from thought. And awareness means attention. To attend. That is, there can be only attention without any compulsion, without any direction. And you can only attend with your whole being, with your mind, with your heart, with your brain, with your nerves, completely. And that is total awareness, in which there is no fragmentation as the observer and the observed, the one who is aware and the thing that's going to be aware of.